Hey, and welcome to Oceana's Creator Life. And this is another episode while I'm still running the Gauntlet 30-Day Challenge. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about mental health as a content creator, simply because I've had my own very public struggles with this. I suffer from depression and PTSD, and I know a lot of other people in the content creation industry have similar issues. So let's get into it. So, today we're going to talk a little bit about three major things I've noticed in the content creation world as somebody who suffers from mental illness and who also talks a lot about mental health. First, I'm going to talk about the very, very real issue of secondhand trauma. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the issue of online trolls and how they can very much impact um your mental health and pretty much everything. And third, I'm going to talk about the other issue that I've noticed, which is toxic partnerships in the content creation world. And from there, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about how to get better at handling this stuff from somebody who's a veteran and who is still honestly learning. But I'm going to give you guys my tips. I'm going to give you guys a little heads up about what to expect, because this is me giving you my knowledge as a 6-year veteran of Medium and all the others. So, yeah, let's get into it. So let's start off with key point number one: secondhand trauma. Secondhand trauma is when you are not actually personally affected by something that has been going on, such as reading about ICE, reading about the trauma of a true crime person who was assaulted by like 100 people, or reading about, say, this horrible injustice that happened to somebody, but you still take it in and you're still angry about it. Or let's say that you read some really toxic dating advice that makes you kind of hate people after reading it. That's another form of secondhand trauma, because what they're doing is that they're actually traumatizing you through their content. And sometimes they do this knowingly, sometimes they do it unknowingly. And honestly, as a consumer, you have to owe it to yourself to be media literate enough to know, okay, this stuff is having a really bad effect on me. I can't keep reading this. I can't keep watching this. That's on the consumer. But when you're in a content creation field, you might not always have that ability, especially when it comes to working in a specific niche. That's the number one reason that I tell people that you really have to know yourself before you get into content creation for certain niches. Some of the most uh, prone to secondhand trauma, those niches would include things like true crime, um, FBI investigation type stuff, predator catching, dating. Believe it or not, dating actually is probably one of the most trauma enhancing fields that I've seen, for at least for most people. I personally write about dating as a way to heal from my own issues, but I've noticed that a lot of other people don't do that. They actually seem to get themselves angrier when they talk about their dating life or they talk about other people's dating life. It's a weird thing that I've noticed, but dating definitely has a tendency of bringing out like the worst secondhand trauma in a lot of people, and you have to be aware of that. I'm trying to think of other like secondhand trauma type things that tend to happen. Some people also get triggered by cults, and they end up just, they end up like in a really dark mental place when they're talking about certain issues. And it's up to you to know yourself well enough to go, okay, am I actually doing this because I can detach from this and because I find this interesting to talk about, or because I find it as a healing issue? Or is it one of those things where I know that if I keep reading it, it's going to traumatize me and I'm going to end up in a bad headspace? If you're new to content creation, what I actually suggest you do is I suggest that you make about a month's worth of content, just like every day. Do content in one of these niches if you're interested in working in those niches, just to see how your mind is after a month. Because for a lot of people, they'll be like, yeah, 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 I can actually do this, I can handle this. But when it actually comes to being exposed to all that negativity and not being able to compartmentalize it, they might feel stuck if they already publish it. You know what I mean? So just do like a trial run, a draft, to see how you feel after a month. And if you're still good, if you're happy as a clam, then by all means, go and continue working in that particular niche. It probably does suit you very well. And I mean that as a good thing because, hey, I work as a writer in the dating niche and I know how toxic that can be. It's not for everyone, but if it's for you, go and get it. So let's talk a little bit about the one thing that I've noticed seems to hurt people's mental health the most in this field, and that is trolls. I've seen it in spicy industries. I've seen it in my own inbox. I've actually had people threaten to hurt me in my own inbox. I've had people literally make hate videos about me, which is okay. I guess that's cool. Obviously, I'm living a lot more in their head rent free than I would ever want to. I don't really care what they think. And that's like 90% of winning against trolls. It's realizing, okay, this person clearly has some issues going on in his life that they're so triggered by whatever you're saying that they have to actually lash out in anger and hate. Hurt people hurt people. And some people just hurt people because they want to hurt people. It's not you. It's not anything that has to do with your value. It's the fact that they're not okay. And the more that you realize that, the more things tend to make a lot more sense. And moreover, you also have to remember that depending on what your content is about, those trolls could actually just be bots sent by another country. It's messed up to think about this, but this is actually a real thing. Especially like if you're working as a political pundit, it's going to be happening on both sides, left and right. With that said, if you're trying to cultivate a community around your videos, the best thing that you can do is block the trolls, encourage positive comments, and once you get to a big enough following, I have honestly seen people hire moderators for this stuff, and it works out very well. If you've noticed that you're starting to get a lot of hate on very specific platforms, the best thing that you can do is honestly rethink whether or not you want to be on that platform. One of the reasons that I kind of just like left my X account to die is because I really didn't like seeing all that negativity. And if that's the case with you, it's okay to just sit there and be like, you know what? It's just really not worth whatever this is. I don't want to have to go through all these hoops just to communicate in a healthy manner with my fans. That's pretty much it. Just don't feed the trolls. Finally, let's talk a little bit about toxic partnerships. I want to emphasize this romantically and business wise. Toxic partnerships can make or break you as a content creator. I've seen this in spicy content. I've seen this in mainstream modeling. I've seen this in content creation. I've seen this on documentaries on Netflix, such as Bad Influence about kid influencers. I've seen this in writing. I've seen this in publishing. The partners that you have around you, doesn't matter what genre of content creation you're in, they can make or break you. And that's true romantically and when it comes to your actual business assets. Romantically and business wise, the funny thing is that they tend to have the exact same red flags. If you notice that they're trying to isolate you, if you notice that you're constantly at somebody's beck and call, even when it's not stated that you have to be in the contract, if you notice that they keep trying to sequester you away from family and friends, if you notice that they berate you, that they yell at you, that they threaten you, or that they seem very, very interested and very judgmental of you, um, be careful with them. Don't get involved with them. If you're in a business like partnership, and this goes with music especially, though I can also say that I've seen it with publishers as well. And I mean, and by publishers I mean like actual like bloggers, like who actually had like their own blog, like mainstream blog, or people who were, you know, working in certain magazines. I'm not going to name names, but the contract that you have is going to make or break your ability to protect yourself if things go sideways. Anytime that somebody does not want to give you a contract, it's a sign that something might be wrong with them. This is not always the case, but it's enough of the case that I've actually started to demand contracts of people. And that's true also when it comes to being a freelancer. I now demand contracts of people, or I only go through sites like Upwork. And honestly, I want to give up the freelancing. I really don't like 1099ing. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about some of the warning signs about toxic partnerships, okay? First off, the isolation and the control. If you start noticing that they make catty remarks about you, if you start noticing that when you're busy, they throw a fit or they get upset if you don't answer them, and they don't understand that the answer is a no if there's no answer, that's a sign that you have a very, very toxic partnership. If you have somebody who gets angry when you get paid, that's a toxic partnership. If you have somebody who, for lack of a better term, seems to be way too invested in you for their own good, that's the sign that you have a toxic partner. If you have somebody who's trying to dissuade you from being a content creator or from being a music artist or from being a writer, that's somebody who's going to eventually sabotage your relationship because they're not interested in you succeeding. They're interested in controlling you. When it comes to business, the business side of things, be very, very careful about a person who has a very sketchy reputation among their peers. If you are known for being sketchy, there's usually a reason why. And this is not always the case. I've actually seen with one individual who my husband and I, we actually had to release a public statement about. He badmouthed both of us to some key players, and we never did anything to them. We actually bent over backwards trying to make this guy happy, but he wanted me to leave my husband for him. And by for him I mean like he just wanted complete control over my husband. And he would flip out if my husband got a booking and he didn't, or if my husband got paid and he didn't. That's the kind of toxic partnership that can easily burn out your entire career. And I've noticed that whenever somebody behaves that way, that kind of like two-faced snaky pit viper type thing, 9 times out of 10 it will get back to them. It will end up with people knowing what you did. Especially now that there's the internet, there's always going to be receipts for the way that you behave. So I don't suggest you do that, and I don't suggest that you hang out with people like that because it will get back to you and it will end up hurting your career. And with that said, another thing that I've noticed that a lot of people in this industry do is the power play. If you have a lot of followers, if you have a lot of viewers, if you have, say, a business that is much more established, they can get away with a lot of sketchy stuff and they often will flex power at you. And while sometimes it's okay to pay the Pied Piper, so to speak, 9 times out of 10, the people who are dangling things in front of you to make you jump, they were never going to actually give you those things in the first place. So just letting you know. A good partner will never isolate you, control you, berate you, or threaten you. They will never sabotage you. They will never talk bad about you. They will never be the person who you're afraid of. And if you start noticing that whenever you're working with somebody and your mental health starts to decline, that's your sign that you need to get out of that partnership. Leave. Say, I'm not doing this anymore. If you start noticing red flags, whether it's love bombing, like, oh my God, you're the best content creator ever. Let me give you this awesome deal. Or, oh my God, you're so perfect. Everybody's been hurting me, but you're so nice to me. That is your sign to watch out for that person because 9 times out of 10, they're a snake. And you know what? As a content creator who has struggled with mental health after being burned by so many people, I will be very, very blunt about it. I stopped partnering with anybody for anything. Anything that you see from me from now on, unless it's a guest post, is all me. And I think that that's the only way that I can actually function anymore because I've been burned so badly by so many people. And it's one of those things I see with a lot of long term content creators. They do not want to work with any other people. They have their own personal go to person for video editing, for you know, advertising, for SEO, for whatever, and they just do their content creation. They do the star thing. If they decide that they need to have a co-star, or if they need to have like a guest on, that's a different story, but they never rely on just one person anymore because, much like myself, they get burned out, they get burnt, they get betrayed, they get sabotaged. And it's one of the things that, it's probably one of the most damaging parts about being in any sort of arts, because it is so common. It is such a massive betrayal, and it's such a business as usual thing that you can't even really complain about it, because it always makes you seem like the crazy one. So if you are not sure about somebody, do a background check, find out their reputation. If their reputation is known for causing drama in a certain scene, 9 times out of 10, that's a sign that you don't want to get involved with them. If they are part of a toxic scene and all of a sudden everybody likes them, that's also a sign that you don't want anything to do with them, because toxic people tend to like the most toxic people of all. Um, if you notice that they're starting to act unprofessional with you, if you notice that they're starting to berate you, if you notice that they're starting to pick apart your work, that's a sign you got to get out of there. If they refuse to give you a contract, if they refuse to abide by that contract, if they use things to try to intimidate you, um, when you're working with them, that is your sign to cut things off. One of the reasons that I stopped working with other people is because so many people in the content creation world are really terrible people. And yes, there might be opportunities there, but I'm scared that one of these people will end up just breaking me. And you know what? I think it's safer, and this is why I tell other people to do the same, to just work solo and just have guests. Because more often than not, that's the only way that you can 100% cover your back. Unfortunately, what that means for your mental health is that you have to be incredibly choosy about who you associate with. And after a certain point, after a certain number of followers, guess what? That also means that you're probably going to end up having to sign NDAs. It's a thing among celebrities. And depending on like how big you get as a content creator, especially a YouTuber or an Instagram model or an OF model, you're going to need that. You're going to need that, honey, because people are looking to dig up on you. So that's my 2 cents on that. So by now you probably noticed that everything that I said so far has a little bit of a theme to it, and that is that you really need to encourage the good and cast out the bad. If you notice that your content or the content that you're researching is having a really bad effect on your mental health, knock it off. Choose another niche. It is fine to pivot. It's totally fine to reinvent yourself and reinvent your brand. It might take a little bit of a learning curve, but you know what? It's better that you have that learning curve, and it's better that you have that pivot than it is to deal with mental ward bills in the US. Trust me on that one. I know that a little bit too well. Now, I might be a few like french fries short of a happy meal. I might be a little bit woo woo, but I do believe in energy. And I do believe that the more that you allow bad energy into your life, the more it magnifies. That's why you can't allow trolls on your site. You can't allow toxic partnerships into your life. You can't allow people who drag you down. One of the best things I've ever done for myself, aside from potentially getting a new chair, because I've been fidgeting a lot because it's a very uncomfortable chair I'm sitting on. Anywho, um, one of the best things I did in my life was actually start to actively walk away from people who I felt I no longer needed in my life, who I felt attracted drama, who I felt were hurting me or were just keeping me back. And the more that I've learned to force people to respect my time or just have my butt out the door and to, respect treating me a certain way, or have me just not work with them, the better people have treated me and the better I've felt about myself. Right now, I might be a person who is a total loner when it comes to my work. But you know what I can say? I'm a lot healthier than I used to be. And if you're in content creation, you owe it to yourself to have that same attitude. If you're not quite ready and you're not quite there yet, please do yourself a favor and really rethink becoming a content creator unless you're willing to have that very steep and often very painful learning curve. I really wish somebody had told me about that when I first started. Anywho, that's me. It's been Oceana's creator life. You can see me as oceana.makes.content on Instagram. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. Please share this, and I'll see you next time.